Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, our top stories this evening. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says he wants asylum hotels shut before the next election. Afghanistan's health ministry is asking for international aid after at least 800 people died in a magnitude 6 earthquake. And the Kremlin has denied accusations that it interfered with the GPS system on a plane carrying the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines tonight with the political commentator Adam Bolton and the Telegraph's comment editor Annabel Denham. Welcome and lovely to see both of you. So as ever, let's check out those front pages, shall we? Starting with the Times. It looks at the announcement today from the Home Secretary about reforms to the asylum system, saying Yvette Cooper is taking the fight to Farage. The Guardian says Keir Starmer's reshuffle is an attempt to regain control of economic policy from the Treasury. The Eye focuses on the Prime Minister's cabinet reshuffle as the Chancellor's number 2 moves to a new position in the cabinet. Smiling through the pain, the Daily Telegraph also looks at Rachel Reeves's second-in-command moving to a new role in government. Financial Times says the Prime Minister's shake-up is designed to arrest the slide in his and the party's fortunes. I'd be safer in Somalia. That is the headline on the front page of the Metro, looking at Sky News' special report from Nuneaton about asylum seekers. The headline for the Daily Mail, 3,567 in, 0 out. The paper labelling the government's one-in, one-out policy a fiasco. A warning from Reform's leader, Nigel Farage, to the Prime Minister. It's on the front page of the Daily Express. Daily Mirror carries calls from health experts to get rid of vapes amid fears they increase the risk of strokes. And The Sun looks ahead to the upcoming series of Strictly Come Dancing with reports that some celebrity contestants are taking weight loss drugs. While the Daily Star has an interview with the actress Emily Attack, who says she was groped at different rap parties. So let's bring in Adam and Annabel and many of the newspapers leading on the political manoeuvres today, not least what felt like an internal reshuffle of sorts. And the Financial Times suggests this is to arrest the slide. Adam, what did you make of what we saw today, the movement of Darren Jones, for example, from the Treasury?
Well, nobody saw anything like this happening. There was speculation that there might be ministerial moves. There was, important to bear in mind that some of these people who've been moved today were only appointed a matter of months ago. So it clearly shows that there's quite a lot of turmoil at the top of government. I mean, the Financial Times saying that Keir Starmer is acting to stop the slide is presumably how one can make sense of the moves that have been made. Now, the interesting thing is that it appears that Sir Keir Starmer has taken control of the economy and presumably control of the very difficult budget to come up away from the Treasury and Rachel Reeves, because he's taken Darren Jones, who was the First Secretary to the Treasury. He's now called First Secretary to the Prime Minister. It's a sideways move. It appears at the moment that there isn't going to be a cabinet-level First Secretary to the Treasury, which is a job traditionally the man who holds the purse strings and actually has to work out government spending. And he's also bringing in, again, has been widely trailed, Minouche Shafik as an advisor, someone who worked for the Bank of England and has recently been head of Columbia University, and is, whenever people talk about we need an economist, she's normally top, fairly near the top of the list. So what's interesting about this, in a sense, is if Keir Starmer is taking control, why is he doing it, bearing in mind that Rachel Reeves has been his closest ally? And also, if there's going to be a fall guy after the budget for the state of the economy, he's sort of lined himself up rather than Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, absolutely. Daily Telegraph, smiling through the pain, showing Rachel Reeves. Their take is that Reeves has had to put on a brave face after being frozen out by Sir Keir Starmer, whose cadre of left-leaning finance experts will now oversee the budget. We'll come on to the left-leaning part of that in just a moment, because there's been reams of coverage about that already. But is this taking the legs away from Rachel Reeves? And if so, picking up what Adam said, why is it necessary?
And why would Keir Starmer want to have his fingerprints all over the October budget? Let's not forget, in the Labour manifesto, they said they weren't intending to raise taxes beyond those they had set out, among them the VAT on private school fees. Then you had the October budget last year, when they raised taxes by £40 billion, including that £25 billion increase in employers' national insurance. Then, at the start of the year, the Chancellor insisted that she wouldn't be coming back to raise taxes further. And here we are, just a few months later. We've had a week or so now of pitch rolling about which taxes might be increased. And it very much looks as though the sequencing could be that Reeves stands up at the October-November budget this year. She hikes taxes again. It's deeply unpopular with the electorate. And that is the moment when Keir Starmer decides he's got to act, so he's got to have a more fundamental reset. However, you know, let's see. And certainly she's beaming on the cover of the Daily Telegraph, and that's perhaps reminding readers of those images, those scenes from the Commons chamber just a couple of months ago when she was in tears and
Still, no one's ever worked out why.
No, really didn't get to the bottom of it. But the problem really is, when you start to have divisions between a Prime Minister and their Chancellor, you get markets feeling a bit more jittery. They're not putting on a united front. Look at what's happening with gilt yields and how those are rising. Obviously, our national debt is absolutely enormous. So that relationship is actually very important, not just for the functioning of government and ensuring that the economy is managed as best as possible, but also the optics of it. And
the state of the public finance is such, the headroom's so small, that for half the year we seem to have speculation about what taxes will be taken in the budget or services cut, which seems, which is difficult given what happened in the
But that
welfare
is exactly
changes.
the point. I mean, we've now got, I think, the highest cost of borrowing for the government in the G7, the highest inflation rate in the G7, and the overall debt level is going up, although it's not as bad as France, for example, or Italy. But it's crisis. And one of the reasons why all this appears to be going on in public is because that's the only way to keep the markets on side. You know, you can't afford to have a budget which suddenly shocks people, because, we saw what happened with Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng. And so now, basically, they are arguing all this out effectively in public.
So the tax on landlords, for example, any suggestions of wealth taxes, some of the people who've been brought in to advise, Torsten Bell, etc. Are you saying we will see a proportion of those, or we'll see most of them come in? What is your best bet on the direction that given the people now helping?
I mean, I think there's argument going on. There are a lot of kites being flown. But I think by the time we get to the budget, remember, we still don't know when it's going to be.
No.
It won't be a surprise, whatever it is. And it may be that already we've reached a point where someone in the government says, well, I can't go along with this. I mean, because the essential problem that Keir Starmer's got is as a result of the U-turns he made over winter fuel allowance, and subsequently he can't put up taxes because his own party have told him he can't cut welfare. Because his own party have told him he can't cut welfare, so they're incredibly cornered.
They are. I mean, they're totally boxed in. There's very little discussion on the spending side of the ledger coming from Labour. How are they going to bring down government expenditure, which they will need to do, because there's only so much they're going to be able to squeeze out of the productive side of the economy if they are to stick to their tax triple lock of not raising income tax, national insurance, although they've already raised employers' national insurance, or VAT. I suspect that they might address maybe some VAT exemptions. They won't touch the rate of VAT, but they might might broaden that net, perhaps hiking council tax, I don't know, some money here or there down the back of the sofa. But obviously, as Adam's referenced, they went into the summer very divided. They just had the U-turn on the winter fuel payment, and then they had that welfare reform, massive row. And there's a sense, I think, that Labour have wasted the weeks of the summer and actually just lost more ground to Farage, who I think is actually, he's had quite a good couple of months and does still feel as though the momentum is very much still with reform.
And it heads to their party conference this weekend, don't they? And so in a sense, they get the momentum again, despite the fact that we saw today, asylum, they're going to try and stop the family reunions as part of this policy to try and crack down on migration.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've also had today not just these changes, but the Prime Minister giving a back-to-work interview on the radio.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that he said two things. First of all, he sort of said, well, what reform we're proposing on migrants will be quite nice, but it won't work.
Yeah, it's fanciful,
Yeah, he didn't.
Forget it.
It's
dreamland stuff.
He didn't actually make a sort of moral or practical case against what reform's saying. And then on top of that, he just said, right, from now on, the priority is, I understand where people are fed up. I'm going to address the cost of living.
And by the way, I've got George's flag in number 10. Yeah, but
I mean, he is sort of, dancing to the tune or trying to dance to the tune of those people who are unhappy at the moment.
Yeah, so how much of the policy we see is electoral numbers driven in terms of the polling? The eye still going on the undermining of Rachel Reeves. Starmer seizes the grip of the budget after Treasury mistakes hit Labour in the polls, and certainly, I know, Annabel, you could list them in your view. Daily Mail's decided to go on the immigration system and the promise that those returns of those arriving in small boats will begin, fairly soon. But again, can they rely on the one-in, one-out system? Clearly not from the Daily Mail. So the problem is they're asking for patience, effectively, aren't they? And yet people see sharp action from Trump's America. Speedy, severe action. And we're being asked, we've got things in place, they might be a bit dull, not as fanciful, as Farage, bear with us. But people don't want to bear with anymore.
Well, that is the figure, the Daily Mail gives that figure of the number of people who've come in since Keir Starmer took over. But actually, zero out is not true, as they would say. They would say that they've had flights of people leaving the country. But it just shows that, you can argue about these figures in all sorts of different ways. For example, the figures for August are likely to be down on August last year and previous years, but the government doesn't even dare try and boast about that because the overall figures are going up. And it'll be very interesting. I mean, one of the changes that Keir Starmer made today was bringing in his third head of communications.
Yeah. Somebody you will have remembered from here.
We both knew. I mean, he's a man called Tim Allen, who we first knew as the deputy to Alistair Campbell in the Blair years. He then came and actually worked for this company. He was head of public affairs at this company. Then he went out into business, set up his own public affairs company, Portland, which he sold. So he's not a man who has to work. He's wealthy, but he's a very forceful figure. And Steve Richards, who I know reviews the papers here sometimes, remembered, and I remembered too, the farewell party when Tim Allen left Downing Street, where Tony Blair joked, actually the thing about Tim is even more right-wing than I am. So it'll be very interesting to see how Tim Allen fits in that. But certainly he is a bigger and more powerful figure than either Matt Doyle or James Lyons, who've preceded him in this job.
But I do think it doesn't, you could argue it doesn't matter who's in that role. Keir Starmer's on to his third, fourth comms director in number 10. If the Prime Minister doesn't have a plan for government, if he doesn't have a vision for how he wants the country to look after 4 or 5 years, then what is the message that these experts are going to be selling to the country? And that's fundamental problem.
Well, there is a saying in American politics, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig.
On that note, it's time to take a break, I think, actually. Coming up, Sky News' special report on divisions over asylum seekers in Nuneaton, featuring on the front of tomorrow's Metro. Back in a moment.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News. We located footage of the aid drop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. Now, this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references?
Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview, joined once again by the political commentator Adam Bolton and the comment editor of the Daily Telegraph, Annabel Denham. Welcome back to both of you. Your paper then, Annabel. Angela Rayner, in the news a lot, one might say. She can't tell us about her tax affairs. Why not?
This is because apparently there's a confidential court order which prevents her from disclosing details about them. They believe that the order will cover her divorce, any proceedings involving the children, and they will get legal protections as a consequence of that. So it may well be that this enables her to shut down some of the questions, uncomfortable questions that she's been facing relating to her property dealings and her clearly very complex financial arrangements. Now, nobody at any point has suggested that she's done something illegal here, though the Tories have raised questions about the fact that the taxpayer is paying council tax on where she's living at Admiralty House, which is regarded as her second home, though she doesn't own it. Nevertheless, it's not a great look for somebody who is the most prominent figure on the left of the Labour Party to be so canny with her own tax affairs. Let's not forget that it's very much the left's position that really we ought to pay all the taxes that we should. We ought to all pay our fair share in order that we can fund our public services, our wonderful NHS and so on and so forth. So, you know, she may not have technically done anything wrong, but you have to wonder, you know, and will this continue to follow her around?
Well, the Telegraph's certainly not letting go, is it? Let's be fair. Let's go to the Metro, shall we? And it's after our correspondent report, Shimon Freeman-Powell as well, amid protests at hotels housing migrants, rising hostility towards asylum seekers. We touched on this briefly with Yvette Cooper standing in the Commons today talking about family reunions would be squeezed out and saying that Labour will not, you know, fan the flames of division, Adam, which is clearly an accusation towards reform on, you know, George's flags, union flags, etc., and on the protests outside asylum hotels.
Yeah, this actually is a story taken straight from Sky News, that this man who's been a sometime asylum seeker who's been in the UK for 20 years saying now he wants to go back to Somalia because he feels it would be safer there. It appears that rather than go back himself, he wants the taxpayer to pay for him to go back. But, I mean, what is interesting about this is, you know, the whole question of asylum is based on the fact of people being in danger. And, you know, if they don't feel they're any longer in danger, then maybe, you know, they will go back. And it just reminded me that this is what Samo Farah's done as well, is it not? He Somali, was a asylum seeker here, and I think he's now taken his family to Dubai or somewhere, has he not? He was a Somali as well. So it's almost as if, you know, global circumstances may actually mean that this is less of a problem. But it also raises a question as to whether people are genuinely asylum seekers or they're what are called economic migrants, i.e. shopping around to live somewhere where they think they'll get a better life, and then when that changes, prepared to go back on what they originally wanted to do.
Let's go to the Daily Mirror. Ban the vape. Scientists warn of irreversible harm to young people's brains and hearts. Annabelle.
Yes, and there have been various panics over the last decade or so relating to vapes. There were concerns about pop-worn lung, though I think those have been those have dissipated somewhat. Ultimately, you know, my view is we ought to welcome vaping as a form of harm reduction. Nobody is suggesting it is good for you, but nevertheless, the rate of people smoking has halved since 2012, when vaping really sort of became a big thing. So.
Annabelle, we've run out of time. Annabelle, Adam, fascinating stuff tonight. Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you. Press Preview continues in the 11.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky security and defence editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
It is 11 o'clock. This is Sky News' extended press preview. Our top story. A promise to close asylum hotels for good as the government unveils plans to tackle the migration crisis. The Prime Minister insists he completely gets public concern over migration as he rejigs his Downing Street team after a summer of discontent. Also tonight, the Taliban says more than 800 people have been killed in an earthquake in Afghanistan. Russia is accused of jamming the GPS on board a plane carrying the President of the European Commission. Plus, a record-breaking transfer deadline day as Liverpool finally get their man. Well, over the next hour, we will be discussing today's news with our reviewers, the political commentator Adam Bolton and the Telegraph's comment editor Annabel Denham. And later, we'll have a full run-through for you of tomorrow's front pages. Well, hello there, good evening. We will bring you then the headlines and tomorrow's front pages over the views of our paper reviewers, the political commentator Adam Bolton and the comment editor of The Telegraph, Annabel Denham. First, though, the Prime Minister has insisted that he completely gets public concern about migration and says he wants to accelerate plans to empty asylum hotels before the next election. The government has also confirmed that it is pausing new applications for refugee family reunions and will begin the first returns of migrants who have crossed the Channel later this month. Well, the announcements came as Sir Keir Starmer rejigged his Downing Street operation in the wake of a summer which has seen protests on the streets over migration and a Labour slump in the polls. Here's our deputy political editor, Sam Coates.
The faces of his closest aides on the day after the election, or at least that was then. In the 5 years since he's become leader, Keir Starmer's had 4 chiefs of staff, 2 cabinet secretaries and 5 directors of communication. And today, again, he changed that team around him. On the left is Darren Jones, the Treasury number 2 who oversaw government spending. He's being sent next door to help the Prime Minister. Old faces back too. Tim Allen helped Labour prep for power in 1997. And after a spell in lobbying is now in charge of the political message, back for phase 2 of this government.
The urgency and the frustration I completely understand. I want to go further and faster. And that's amongst the reasons I've done some changes here at Number 10 today to make Number 10 more powerful to drive through the changes that we need.
To deliver pointed promises like this.
When it comes to the asylum hotels, I want them emptied. I've been really clear about that.
Most moves seem designed to boost Number 10's economic firepower as they wrestle with a massive budget black hole. But one appointment matters most.
The Prime Minister has brought in a Mr. Fix-It to sort out his problems. Mid-ranking Cabinet Minister Darren Jones has been parachuted into Downing Street with a brief to stick his nose in other Cabinet Ministers' affairs and report back to the Prime Minister about what works and what doesn't. Maybe there's a reason that job and job title, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, has never existed in the past.
Delivery for these protesters is hard. The Home Secretary clear that closing hotels forever won't happen at once.
We need to close all asylum hotels, and we need to do so for good. But that must be done in a controlled and orderly manner, and not through a return to the previous government's chaos that led to the opening of hotels in the first place.
The Tories say this is a damp squib.
What I would actually like to see the Home Secretary talk about is how she's going to close down the asylum hotels. What they have done with their recent court case is actually show that they believe that illegal migrants have more rights than our local communities, and we completely disagree with that.
This morning we've got all the Number 10 staff together.
Fresh start, new team, but will it solve old problems? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, in the towns affected by the migration crisis, deep divisions remain. Our Midlands correspondent, Shaman Freeman-Powell, has been reporting from Nuneaton. There she spoke to an asylum seeker from Somalia who's been in the UK for 20 years but wants to be deported because he says he would be safer there.
I don't want to come here to eat and sleep like baby. You understand? Just I have life, go back and in Somalia. The country is not safe, but my country now, I'm safe. I want to go back.
Washerman's reporting makes the front page of the Metro. Its headline, I'd be safer in Somalia. The Eye says, or the Metro rather, says it's contacted the Home Office about the asylum seekers case. Daily Mail calls the government's one-in, one-out policy a fiasco. The Eye focuses on the Prime Minister's cabinet reshuffle today, if you can call it that, as the Chancellor's number 2 moves to a new position in the cabinet. Smiling through the pain, the Daily Telegraph examines what this means for Rachel Reeves, the second in command, of course, moving to a new role in government, as we said. Labour's desperate plan to stop the boats, that's on the insides of the Express, as the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, lays out the government's reforms to the asylum system. So let's get the thoughts of Adam and Annabelle. Two parts to this. The asylum part, the pressure from Farage and Reform, first of all. And the next part is the internal movements, if you like, in the workings of the Downing Street operation. Annabelle, do you want to kick off on that latter part to start with, which has certainly dominated the newspapers?
Yes, that's right. So the FT, for instance, talking about Starmer wanting to arrest his sliding in the polls with a shake-up in Downing Street. What main appointments? I think most people were expecting some sort of ministerial reshuffle, but actually what we're seeing are new advisors coming into Downing Street, including a new economics advisor, Minouche Shafik. We've seen the Chief Secretary to the Treasury being moved from number 10 to number 11. Nobody replacing him, it seems, as Adam said earlier, at cabinet level. Now, you know, this is about Starmer's 9th reset, and you have to wonder how much these new appointments are really going to cut through with the British public. Labour have had this entire summer to really, you know, have a fundamental rethink, reflect on 12 months in government, the first 10 of which saw them sink further in the polls than any government previously in history. And yet it doesn't really feel as though they've taken stock and that they are now going to present a new vision to the country. In fact, they're talking about how the first year was all about fixing the foundations, and now it's all about delivery, delivery, delivery. And you just wonder which foundations exactly have been fixed, because inflation is up and growth forecasts have been downgraded and the markets are increasingly jittery and our national debt is around 100% of GDP. And what exactly is it of the economic inheritance that they have complained about endlessly they received from the Tories that they've actually fixed? And what exactly is it that they want to deliver now? Because Keir Starmer doesn't really seem to have any kind of coherent agenda for government. I think he was very successful, he and his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, at campaigning and getting those 411 seats, that big majority. But it almost feels that they didn't spend much of the time in opposition really preparing for government and establishing what it is that they would want to achieve.
That said, I think what Yvette Cooper announced today on dependents is quite significant because, as you know, and quite a lot of the outrage this summer has been that the rights of asylum seekers have apparently seemed to trump the rights of people already in this country. And, you know...
And the point about that is if you are a British sponsor trying to bring in even your partner who's foreign, you get them in more slowly than if you were an asylum seeker who's been given the protection to stay and they can get their family.
Well, exactly, significantly more. If you or if one marries a French person or an American person,
you need the money.
2 years, you have to show you've got the money, and it takes 2 years to bring them in. Whereas asylum seekers, once they're given the right to remain, with no strings, have been applying to bring their dependents in within a month. That's what the Home Secretary
and then
said
taking
today.
up the homelessness allocation of local councils.
And get full access to welfare. Now, clearly that's wrong, and what she's done now is she's suspended that. And, you know, the statistics are 20,600 migrants' relatives were granted visas in the year to March. So this is a significant figure on people coming in.
But the politics, Adam, in terms of how the newspapers are talking about the rejig within Downing Street. Financial Times, we can see there, Starmer acts to arrest the slide with a shake-up in Downing Street. The Eye, I'm not sure we've got it, I'll read it anyway, Starmer seizes the grip of the budget after Treasury mistakes hit Labour in the polls. And then the Daily Telegraph, smiling through the pain. Reeves puts on a brave face after being frozen out by Starmer. Has she been frozen out? Has he seized control of the budget? And if so, has he put himself in line to be the fall guy should the budget backfire?
Well, what is puzzling about this is it's difficult to work out why he's made the changes that he's made, other than he wants better presentation. Got the Express in front of me, their headline, number 10, mayhem as Starmer shoots the messenger. Again, that's about the appointment of Tim Allen. But as far as Rachel Reeves is concerned, there it is down the bottom left-hand side, as far as Rachel Reeves is concerned, inevitably she's undermined. She's had her closest minister taken away from her and taken by the Prime Minister, who's also bolstering himself with extra economic advisors with Manoush Shafiq. But at the moment, as far as we know, the Prime Minister absolutely supports Rachel Reeves and has repeatedly said he has confidence in her. So, you know, can you make sense of it?
No, I mean, it certainly looks as though she's being undermined with these appointments, and that Number 10 ultimately wants to centralise control, which, you know, I think sends a very dangerous message.
There had been
very
criticism
worrying
that
message.
Number 10 had not overseen Number 11 enough. Anyway, I interrupted you, sorry.
No, but what you want is a situation where the Prime Minister has total trust, confidence, faith in the Chancellor, and that they have a strong enough relationship that he's not feeling as though he needs to seize control. And in a very public way, that certainly the perception at least is that she is being undermined and that she doesn't have his confidence. And now going into what is going to be, we all expect, a very unpopular budget, which will see Labour raise taxes once again, with very little being done on the spending side, because we had that backbench rebellion before the summer. So you just have to wonder how much thought has actually gone into the sort of sequencing and the perception of this.
And the other thing is no one's been promoted to the Cabinet, so that means the number 2 in the Treasury, who basically is someone whose job is to keep control of government spending, is going to presumably be someone outside the Cabinet. And then if you look at the people who've been promoted, there are economic doves and hawks. You know, Tim Allen and Mr Jones are both people who would like to cut government spending. On the other hand, Manoush Shafiq and recently the promotion of Bell last week, they're people who appear to favour putting up taxes and not cutting public spending. So, you know, are we any clearer where the government is heading on the economy towards autumn's budget? The answer is we're not.
But I think one thing that's going to be quite interesting, and just in the next few weeks, is whether sort of public concern over the asylum issue will begin to fade as we ramp up to the October-November budget this year, or whether, you know,
we're doing both tonight.
It's still very fraught, it's still very fractious. No, of course, but, you know, after the summer months, after the situation in Epping, then you had the Home Office deciding that it would, you know, challenge that court ruling which said that migrants had to be moved out of that hotel in Epping because of the change of use of the hotel itself. It wasn't in keeping with our planning laws. But you did have the Home Office last week ultimately saying that the rights of asylum seekers should come before those of come before the concerns of local residents, which seem to be just fanning the flames. But as I say, I wonder whether, just as we go into the autumn, people's concerns will turn more to the cost of living.
And people suggesting today that there is a sweet spot in terms of the majority have. There's those who realise that they're not going to get a job because there's too many people to choose from. You're not going to get put into the upper house, and you might well lose your seat the rate the polls are going, so you might as well say what you feel. So you've got your own internal party to keep on side, which clearly we've seen with the rebellion so far, may not be comfortable for the Prime Minister either.
Yeah, well, but this is all part of the same thing, in as much as he says he understands why people are frustrated. But if they go on being frustrated, he's not going to win the next election. And so a lot of his own party are, as you say, saying, well, I might as well do what I believe in, or what's going to possibly save me and my constituency. So that means there is no party discipline, as we saw over personal independence payments and winter fuel. There's no discipline there to enforce, you know, what many people regard as necessary economic policy.
It's tough, isn't it? Yeah. Let's move on, shall we? This is to the Kremlin, which has denied accusations that it interfered with the GPS system on a plane carrying the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett, has more details.
Well, the Kremlin hasn't replied to our request for comment, but they have given a response to the Financial Times. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov told the newspaper, "Your information is incorrect." The information we have from the EU is that this incident happened yesterday on Sunday. Ursula von der Leyen, who is one of the EU's most senior officials, was on her way to Bulgaria, as you say. The plane was on its approach into the city of Plovdiv when it lost its GPS signal and its electronic navigational aid, which basically means the pilots don't know where they are. And in this case, the plane reportedly had to circle for an hour before landing using paper maps. So not disastrous here, but clearly very alarming nonetheless. The EU doesn't know for sure what caused this, but as you heard there, they suspect Russian interference, citing information they've got from Bulgarian authorities. Now, this isn't the first time that Moscow has been accused of this kind of thing. In March last year, the then British Defence Secretary Grant Shapps was on board a plane that experienced exactly the same kind of thing when flying over Poland, near to Russian airspace in Kaliningrad. Moscow was accused then, and Estonia and other EU member states have made similar accusations multiple times over the past 12 and 18 months. In this case, the timing is certainly curious. Ursula von der Leyen was on a tour of the EU's eastern flank to look at ways of bolstering and improving the bloc's defence capabilities and readiness in the face of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Whether or not this indeed was a case of Russian interference, I'm not sure we'll ever know, but one thing's for sure, it's certainly raised tensions.
Well, meanwhile, Vladimir Putin being given the red carpet treatment in China as he joined Xi Jinping and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi for a rather chummy economic summit. Here's how tomorrow's newspapers are covering that. There's the Times, double-page spread, as Vladimir Putin holds a bilateral meeting with the Indian Prime Minister at that regional summit in China. The Financial Times calls the meeting in Shanghai a power play and has the headline, "Modi salutes India's oil deals. Moscow in defiance punitive Trump tariffs." Not sure I've read that properly. That story also features on the front page of the Telegraph too. China sets out a vision for a new world order. And in fact, the North Korean president, as we read, his train carrying Kim Jong-un has just crossed the border into China, according to North Korean state media. So he's joining the melee, which the Times World section calls, Adam, an anti-West alliance.
Well, I think that's what it is, and I think it just goes to show yet another impact of the election of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has failed to confront Vladimir Putin or indeed the Chinese in terms of, he's backed off on putting tariffs on the Chinese. But he doesn't look like he's the man calling the shots globally or with sensible policies. And the really interesting thing is that the Indians have gone along to this. Now, the Indians traditionally are, their main rivals, as they see it, and they share a border, of course, is China. But as Ed Conway reported on Sky, what is happening now is India faces tariffs and it's increasing its links with China. It's also buying its oil from Putin, which therefore continues the Ukrainian war machine. And if you put that together with what we were talking about earlier on, Ursula von der Leyen's plane being jammed, I mean, of course the Russians have denied it. They always deny that they're doing it. But what we are seeing is the world being forced into different groups. We've got America putting itself first, not really being effective. We've got these sort of...
Not loving Europe either.
Exactly.
To be fair,
Europe still threatened having to look after itself. And in fact, what Ursula von der Leyen was doing was really trying to unite Europe on defence. And then you've got this kind of axis of evil, if you like, developing in the Shanghai group.
Well, I think access of big economics as well, a big economic power.
Exactly, yes. Anyway, it was believed that this would be the Chinese century, at least by the Chinese Communist Party. And these are exactly major global economic players. And it's a sort of consolidation, as Adam says, of this axis of bad actors, authoritarian bad actors. But I think what must be most alarming...
India would be
galling-
unhappy to be included in that, because Modi was matey with Trump, wasn't he? But
Well,
anyway.
he was, but then Trump slapped 50% tariffs on
Yeah,
Indian
there have been
exports.
some moves on that.
But I think what arguably might be most galling for Trump is that this is coming just 2 weeks after he met Putin in Alaska and was rolling out the red carpet for him. They were discussing potential for peace in Ukraine. And now we have, not only this gathering, but clearly an unequivocal sort of display of support from Xi to Putin, which is what he's been craving and clamouring for ever since he launched that illegal invasion of Ukraine. But China has long claimed neutrality. This is getting increasingly difficult for Xi to maintain. This really should trouble the West enormously, particularly Europe, which, as Adam says, is increasingly isolated. Trump is no real friend of Europe. He's been absolutely insistent that we find a way to stand on our own 2 feet. And understandably so in some ways, if you look at what's happened to defence spending in European countries compared with the US and who it is that's really funding NATO. Nevertheless, this is clearly a battle for power. It's clearly the world being carved up into pro-Western, anti-Western forces. It's very, very
and a massive military parade in China. The celebration of the formal surrender of Japan in World War II, which is why the North Korean leaders headed for that. You said Modi, I think, was leaving.
Yeah, I don't think Modi wants to be associated with that, given their military tensions. But Trump has just alienated everybody. He's alienated the Indians, A, by slapping them with tariffs, but also by claiming that one of the world pieces he did was between India and Pakistan, whereas India's long-standing position has been that it does not accept foreign interference in its foreign policy. And similarly, Xi now is looking like a big man again, where many people thought that politically he was under pressure in China because the economy is not going so well. So he's just helped alienate and build up these figures who, do not have our interests at heart.
Yeah, destroyed his own soy industry as well and put that all towards Brazil. Anyway, it's a fascinating ride we're on geopolitically, isn't it? And we'll certainly keep an eye on that. I think it's on Wednesday, isn't it, that big military parade? Lots more still to come in our press preview, including condemnation of Israel, as the Foreign Secretary says Gaza is facing a man-made famine.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky Security and Defence Editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Welcome back then. You are watching the press preview, joined again by the political commentator Adam Bolton and the Telegraph's comment editor Annabel Denham. Hear more from both of you in just a moment. But first of all, to Gaza, which the Foreign Secretary today described as a man-made famine. Speaking in the House of Commons, David Lammy said a massive humanitarian response was needed to prevent more deaths.
This is not a natural disaster, it's a man-made famine in the 21st century. And I'm outraged by the Israeli government's refusal to allow in sufficient aid. We need a massive humanitarian response to prevent more deaths. Crucial NGOs, humanitarians and health workers allowed to operate and stockpiles of aid on Gaza's borders released.
Yes, certainly strong words there, Annabel, from David Lammy. Real concern now about people in Gaza and, how powerless people feel to do anything about it at times.
Well, no, that's right. And the humanitarian disaster there worsens from one day to the next. You look at the Strip and it's been reduced to glass and rubble as a consequence of this conflict. But a sad reality is that for Hamas, the human tragedy there, the loss of innocent civilian lives, is a very powerful propaganda tool in the war. They care nothing at all for the people of Gaza. And that makes it extremely difficult for the IDF to achieve its objectives of rooting out the terrorist organisation and returning these hostages who've been held in captivity for the best part of 2 years now.
And we've got the UN General Assembly coming up, have we not? The Trump administration, I think I read, has pulled the visas of those Palestinian representatives planning to go. France pushing for the state of Palestine to be recognised. David Lammy again referencing that today, despite concerns about that, to be fair.
Well, it's going to be a very difficult one for David Lammy and the Prime Minister, who we assume will go as well, because they have said that unless Israel changed its policy, they would recognise the right of Palestinian statehood. And Israel clearly has not changed its policy. Indeed, the rate of killings by the IDF has gone up. I think the figure today was 100 people have been killed in those bomb attacks. And there's still the attempt to move Palestinians out of the area which the IDF says it wants to extend its operations, and still talk, although the UK in no sense supported this, still talk of paying Palestinians to leave the Gaza altogether. So it's a really very difficult situation, and all one can conclude is that, frankly, no one is listening to David Lammy.
Yes, I think it just underscores how impotent the UK is and how anything that we say or do is not going to sway the direction that this conflict goes in. And to that end, you wonder what we're achieving by talking about such things as recognising Palestinian statehood, at least at this stage, and whether we ought to be backing Israel, who is our ally and which was invaded on October 7th, 2023. What exactly are we gaining with these sorts of pronouncements, as we see so frequently from the Foreign Secretary?
I think I'm right in saying, though, that one thing that did happen today was that Greta Thunberg's yacht had to turn around because of bad weather.
There we go.
Gone
Yes,
back
the
to
much
Spain.
vaunted, aid delivery and the flotilla that set off. Lots more still to come in the next part of our programme. We will have a full run through of tomorrow's front pages and we'll discuss more of the day's news. Back in a moment.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Hello there, you're watching the press preview with the stories making tomorrow's newspapers, joined again by Adam Bolton and Annabel Denham. Welcome back to both of you. So then a full look at the front pages for tomorrow. The Times, to start with, looks at the announcement today from the Home Secretary about reforms to the asylum system, saying Yvette Cooper is taking the fight to Nigel Farage. The Guardian says Keir Starmer's reshuffle is an attempt to regain control of economic policy from the Treasury. The Eye too focusing on the Prime Minister's cabinet reshuffle as the Chancellor's number 2 moves to that new position in cabinet. Smiling through the pain, the Daily Telegraph also looks Rachel Reeves's second-in-command moving to a new role in government, supporting the Prime Minister, of course. Financial Times says the Prime Minister's shake-up is designed to arrest the slide in his fortunes. Meantime, I'd be safer in Somalia. That is the headline on the front page of the Metro, looking at Sky News' special report, in fact, from Nuneaton about asylum hotel protests. The headline for the Daily Mail, 3,567 in, 0 out. The paper labelling the government's one in, one out policy a fiasco. A warning from Reform's leader Nigel Farage to the Prime Minister is on the front page of the Daily Express. The Daily Mirror carries calls from health experts to get rid of vapes amid fears they increase the risk of strokes. And The Sun looks ahead to the upcoming series of Strictly Come Dancing with reports that some celebrity contestants are taking weight loss drugs. So let's bring Adam and Annabelle. I'm actually going straight to the Express. I got rid of Cameron and Mrs May. This is Nigel Farage suggesting I'd like to remind Keir Starmer that I'll get rid of him too, effectively. Adam.
Well, the Express has got an exclusive interview with Nigel Farage and they're very happy with what he's saying. I mean, this is quite an odd thing to say. I would like to remind Keir Starmer that I'll get rid of him too. I mean, Keir Starmer presumably is absolutely aware of the threat from Nigel Farage. You know, he can read the opinion polls as well as anybody else. But I think almost what is significant about this is that we've now got the two middle market, right of centre tabloid newspapers, the Mail and the Express, who basically seem to have gone over to Reform UK and Nigel Farage, which is extremely bad news for the Conservative Party. I mean, just sort of en passant in this interview, we also get Nigel Farage saying that Kemi Badenoch will be gone by Christmas.
Is the Telegraph tempted?
I couldn't possibly say, but yes, I think Adam's made a good point there about the Express and the Mail as well. And Farage has got a few axes to grind in this interview, hasn't he? He's saying he's left off the guest list for the Windsor Castle dinner with Donald Trump, saying that they wouldn't invite him, and hey, we're only 15 points ahead in the polls. Then he's got this warning to Keir Starmer that if he goes on being rude to him, then he, Nigel Farage, will get rid of Starmer, just as he got rid of David Cameron and of Theresa May. He does later acknowledge that it's very difficult being Prime Minister and you're responsible for everybody else. But, you just will have to wonder how he would adapt were he ever to make it into number 10. How would he actually go from being this very effective campaigner outside the tent, really, until he finally was successful in his parliamentary bid in 2024?
This, of course, comes as he's heading off to the United States, to Washington, where he's going to run down the UK saying that there's a real danger to free speech. He's going to cite the case of Lucy Connolly, and he's also attacking the Online Safety Act. So, cuddly, smiley Nigel Farage, he is aligning himself with, J.D. Vance and MAGA America as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, fascinating watch, all of this, isn't it? In the meantime, let's go to the front page of The Guardian. An Afghan carries the body of an infant earthquake victim in Nurgal, a powerful earthquake that hit eastern Afghanistan. And I know the Foreign Office is planning emergency funding, but the question is how much appetite is there to fund and help the Taliban? And, ever since the pullout of US and indeed UK forces. Magnitude 6 earthquake rocked several provinces close to the Pakistan border around midnight. The point being that everyone's in bed and, there's no run to the street escape.
No opportunity to escape at all. They believe around 800 people have been killed, 2,500 injured. But you look at that image and wonder how many more will be found beneath the debris and in that destruction. And it isn't just support for the Taliban, of course, but it's the fact that we've run down our foreign aid budget. Now, then you have to wonder who's going to step in to provide the support at times of humanitarian crises just like this, when perhaps our resources are stretched to do so, because a lot of what was the foreign aid budget now is going towards housing asylum seekers in hotels.
And what remains of the foreign aid budget?
Houses, what remains of it, and houses in the UK. But nevertheless, that was quite a bold move by Labour a few months ago. They decided they were going to run down overseas aid in order that they could divert more money towards boosting our defence budget at a time when the world is increasingly dangerous.
Also, unique to Afghanistan because of frankly, the anti-woman discrimination by the Taliban. Aid agencies are actually having problems helping women, that unless they can field female people to deal with the women, the Taliban is saying, leave the women alone, don't help them. So it's a really horrible situation. But then it is a horrible situation in Afghanistan now.
Yeah. It was it not, all hail the vape as a mechanism to stop people smoking. Now the Mirror is certainly, confronting this. Ban the vapes is the front page, and Inside calling it an e-cig epidemic. There's the front page, then ban the vape. Scientists warn of irreversible harm to young people's brains and hearts. Experts fear vapes increase the risk of disease, is the Inside pages, and ban plea as younger user numbers soar. I know this is secondary school toilets is the vape place now. I know you're supportive of it, but is it time to actually take a look what's genuinely in these products and who's taking them?
Well, I mean, what I think is that we need to treat vapes as a very important form of harm reduction. So youth smoking is down from 28% to 14% just in the last few years. So we are seeing significant reduction in the number of young people who are smoking, which we know is really terrible for you. And nobody is suggesting that you should take up vaping or that it doesn't come with some detrimental effects to your health. But I think we need to bear in mind that it might be the lesser of a number of evils, but also the practical side of banning vapes, because they did this in Australia and it led to a huge expansion of its black market. Then they've done it with tobacco as well, tobacco and vapes. And actually, we've seen teenage vaping rates increase as a consequence of that total ban in Australia. So you have to think of what the perverse effects are, even if there's such legislation.
Does it have to be shiny, bright colours and attractive flavours, is the point?
But also you need to bear in mind that it is illegal to sell vapes to people who are underage.
Yeah.
So what perhaps we need to be doing is enforcing the laws that we already have rather than bringing in new ones and really clamping down on those stores, those vendors who are self-supplying.
It's also supposedly illegal to sell disposable ones. But I slightly disagree with you in the sense that the kernel of this story is this professor bringing together the research onto the impact of vapes and saying they have really serious impacts on people's health. And she presented this evidence at a conference of cardiologists in Madrid. And
saying there are 133 potentially harmful chemicals in e-cigarettes, of which 107 are carcinogens.
Exactly. So, and bearing in mind that the government's plan is to gradually raise the age at which you can buy cigarettes altogether, the logic, if people start smoking cigarettes, the logic of saying, well, these are not as bad as cigarettes, that will go as well, and then a ban would presumably make sense.
To the Telegraph now, Annabelle, another nail in the coffin for office romances. The problem is, if you're top of the tree, don't pick someone below you, effectively, isn't it? This is the Nestlé boss.
Yes, that's right. Its chief executive has been sacked with immediate effect after it emerged that he had tryst with a junior colleague. And I think really in the aftermath of the Me Too movement, companies and our societies are extremely sensitive to the idea that there might be people who are in a position of power in an organisation who are then striking up relationships with those at a more junior level, and what are the sort of ethics of that situation. But it seems like Nestlé have been unequivocal here and immediately dismissing Laurent Freixe.
I mean, he's not the first and he won't be the last. We had the head of McDonald's who had to go for having a relationship. We had the head of BP who had to step down. And then, of course, there was the person who was caught on that camera at the
Coldplay
concert, he also had to go. So
And she resigned as well.
Yeah, she resigned.
I mean, the message
That was
is absolutely
catastrophic for them, to be fair.
You know, when it comes to your colleagues, keep it in your trousers.
Okay, that's it. That's it. Fat jabs, strictly speculation about who's having them. 5 stars are taking the drug ahead of the new series.
That's right, and they're worried that because obviously
Well,
this
you
is
say
weight
that's right,
loss
we don't.
measure. Well,
We presume this.
we presume, but they're worried that this weight loss measure obviously means that you significantly decrease your calorie intake, but strictly is very demanding physically. And will these contestants have the energy required to train and then perform every weekend?
Before and after photos of contestants to see who we're talking about here, I'm sure.
I mean, one can see the temptation, though, can't you?
Yeah.
If you're going to be
Yeah.
on screen in revealing outfits.
In lycra, effectively, or not quite lycra, spangles, I think
Yeah.
it is, isn't it? Yeah. Let's go to the Times, another health story, in fact. Half of stroke patients could now fully recover after the NHS introduced revolutionary new software, which allows patients to get a diagnosis up to 1 hour faster than traditional methods. We know with stroke, speed is of the essence, isn't it? So this AI-assisted tool can interpret brain scans much faster, which sounds great news if people can get access to it.
It is very good news, and it's also worth bearing in mind that compared to equivalent countries, the UK has had a bad record on strokes and recovery from strokes for a very long time. So anything that's going to make it better would be good.
No, it's one of the big killers, and I think this is a reminder that we're very much in the foothills of what AI can achieve. And obviously there are risks associated with this new technology, but actually there's enormous potential there as well.
And of course, there's a lot of speculation as to whether or not Donald Trump has had a stroke.
Adam, are you allowed to say that?
Well, it's all over the internet. It's not being reported by mainstream media in America in the same way that problems about Biden perhaps weren't reported. But the reality is Donald Trump has not been heard from for getting on for a week now. There have only been pictures of him, and there's quite a lot of circumstantial evidence, his appearance, bruises on the back of his hands, a drooping eye, and the fact that, you know, someone said, you know, when has Donald Trump ever not said anything for a full week? I mean, it's hard, and there seems to be a change of style in some of his social media posts. So, you know, one of the stories that's developing could well be that Donald Trump, who, remember, was actually older on Inauguration Day this time than Joe Biden was on his Inauguration Day, may have very serious medical problems. But
it wasn't until Biden decided finally that he would step aside and Kamala became the Democratic candidate that you suddenly became aware that Donald Trump was a man who was in his late 70s. And whilst he may have looked sprightly alongside Joe Biden, who did have deteriorating health,
yeah,
actually,
well,
nevertheless,
no evidence of that. And all down here, Trump has done this, Trump has done this, Trump has done this, you know, on the wire service that we use. So we'll you know, see, he might just be having a holiday. We'll see. Very quickly, last one, which is about the weather. I'm not sure I've got time to do it, have I? Anyway, hottest summer. Thank you both of you. Thank you very much indeed. Adam Bolton, Annabel Denham. Lovely to see you both. Thank you very much. We've got the sport next. Massive day, as you can imagine. One of the busiest transfer deadline days in recent history sees this mystery player complete a British record move.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News.
We located footage of the aid drop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. And this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza.
Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message.
Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote,
a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references? Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live. All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Busy day of transfer news. Let's get the details. Here's Mike.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Sky Mobile sponsors the transfer window on Sky Sports News.
Right.
Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank was all smiles with his teammates today, but his future still seems somewhat uncertain.
Honest, I'm just sick and tired of this.
The number that was put before me was 50% more than our highest paid player at the time.
Jimmy had the feeling, do they really want me here?
My determination was not to sell Jimmy to that particular club.
It made me look bad in front of the fans. It was not necessary.
The biggest single challenge is how we managed his exit publicly, which probably Jimmy didn't like very much.
He's settling into his new surrounds. The player renamed Judas Floyd Money in the Bank when he was drummed out of Ellen Road.
Don't believe the figures at all. Don't believe the figures at all.
Reading the text last night, that was nothing about money from his agent. Well, Jesus, lads, honestly.
I just think he's greedy.
The perception that people have of me, the difficult person, blah, 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 never there. Sometimes things happen for a reason.
Another day, another summer signing. The delightfully named Gerald Floyd Hasselbank from Boa Vista. Jimmy to his pals.
Have you heard about people like Billy Bremner and Norman Hunter and things like that?
No.
You never heard of them?
No.
You'll find out about that.
Yeah, I will find out, but I never heard of them, no.
They tell me you put Jimmy. They call you Jimmy and that's it, is that right?
Yes, they call me Jimmy in Portugal and that's it. I think in the beginning of the season I'm gonna learn about English football. But I want to make the best of it and score so much goals as possible.
Well, he finished second top goal scorer in Portugal, so he looks as if he's a finisher, which we were lacking goals last season.
We'd been out to look at Bruno Ribeiro. We signed Bruno Ribeiro and Jimmy Floyd Hasselbaink. It was £2 million and he was an unknown. And you think to yourself, you know, is that money well spent? Nobody had heard of him.
George Graham said to me, we've got to go down to Lisbon on the Sunday because we were going to watch this player. The player was Jimmy Hasselbaink. I remember seeing him in a very run-down, low-key stadium. You knew straight away, you know, there's something there.
And I remember looking at the back of a bus. I was looking and going, who are them two? Because it said the new attack line for, you know, as I said, the men in white, you know, and they said, you know, who are they? And I remember looking, and it was a picture of me and Jimmy on the thing. I was like, oh my God. It took a while to adjust, but everyone saw he had one thing on his mind, and that was to score goals.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, thank you for that. Let's take a look at the weather now. So rather unsettled this week with blustery showers or more prolonged heavy rain, but it is looking drier on Friday. So mostly fine if cool start tomorrow. There will be showers near southern and western coasts and more general rain moving into the southwest. Showers will develop widely again through the morning, sunny spells between, but southern Britain will see more general, heavy and possibly thundery rain spreading from the southwestern parts. Southwestern parts will see the rain giving way to sunny spells and a scattering of showers later. Well, Midnight News is next. All the top stories, including the Prime Minister, promises to close asylum hotels for good as the government unveils plans to tackle the migration crisis amid a rejig in the top team around the Prime Minister.